Alaska Airlines Flight 261 was a McDonnell Douglas MD-83 that crashed into the Pacific Ocean on January 31, 2000, about 2.7 miles north of Anacapa Island, California, due to a catastrophic loss of pitch control, killing all 88 people on board, 2 pilots, 3 cabin crew members, and 83 passengers. What happened? And also, do you know why they had to fly inverted? Let's try to solve this aircraft crash. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, later determined that inadequate maintenance caused excessive wear and eventually failure of a critical flight control system during flight. The probable cause was stated to be a loss of airplane pitch control caused by an in-flight failure of the trapezoidal nut threads on the horizontal stabilizer trim system jack screw assembly. Excessive wear caused by Alaska Airlines' insufficient lubrication of the jack screw assembly caused the thread failure. The plane that crashed was a McDonnell Douglas MD-83 with the serial number 53077 and the registration N963AS. The plane was the 1995th DC-9/MD-80 family plane built, and it had logged 26,000 flight hours and 14,000 cycles before the crash. Flight 261's pilots were both highly experienced aviators. Captain Theodore Ted Thompson, 53, had accumulated 17,750 flight hours and over 4,000 hours flying MD-80s. First Officer William Bill Tansky, 57, had 8,000 total flight hours, including approximately 8,000 hours as the MD-80's first officer. Thompson had been with Alaska Airlines for 18 years, and Tansky had been with them for 15. Neither pilot had been in an accident or incident before the crash. Thompson served in the United States Air Force and Tansky in the United States Navy. 3 Seattle-based flight attendants completed the 5-person crew. The plane's 5 crew members and 47 passengers were en route to Seattle. 30 of the passengers were bound for San Francisco, 3 for Eugene, Oregon, and 3 for Fairbanks, Alaska. 1 passenger was Mexican, 1 was British, and the rest were Americans. At least 35 of the passengers on Flight 261 had some connection to Alaska Airlines or its sister carrier Horizon Air, including 12 actual employees, prompting many of the airline's employees to mourn for those who died in the crash. According to Alaska Airlines, employees frequently filled seats that would otherwise have been left empty on less busy flights. Flowers began to arrive at the company's headquarters in SeaTac. At 1:37 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Alaska Airlines Flight 261 took off from Puerto Vallarta's Licenciado Gustavo Daz Ordaz International Airport and climbed to its intended cruising altitude on flight level 310. The plane was destined for San Francisco International Airport, SFO. The flight crew communicated with the airline's dispatch and maintenance control facilities in SeaTac, Washington, on a company radio frequency shared with operations and maintenance facilities at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, shortly before 15:49 to discuss a jammed horizontal stabilizer and possible diversion to LAX. During this time, the flight crew discussed with the company dispatcher whether to divert to LAX or continue on to SFO as planned. Finally, the pilots decided to divert. The NTSB later determined that the flight crew's decision to divert the flight to Los Angeles was prudent and appropriate. Alaska Airlines dispatch personnel appear to have attempted to persuade the flight crew to continue to San Francisco, then diverting to Los Angeles. Cockpit voice recorder (CVR) transcripts show that the dispatcher was concerned about the impact on the flight's schedule if the flight diverted. The flight crew used the primary trim system to unjam the stuck horizontal stabilizer at 1609. However, once freed, it quickly shifted to an extreme nose-down position, forcing the aircraft into an almost vertical nosedive. In about 80 seconds, the plane descended from about 31,500 feet to between 23,000 and 24,000 feet. Both pilots worked together to regain control of the aircraft, and it was only by pulling with 130 to 140 pounds on the controls that the flight crew could stop the aircraft's 6,000 feet per minute descent and stabilize the MD-83 at approximately 24,400 feet. The CVR recorded at least 4 distinct thumps beginning at 1619, followed 17 seconds later by an extremely loud noise as the overstrained jack screw assembly failed completely and the jack screw separated from the acme nut holding it in place. As a result, at 17,800 feet, the horizontal stabilizer failed, and the aircraft quickly pitched over into a dive while rolling to the left. The crippled plane had been given a block altitude, and ATC had advised several aircraft in the area to maintain visual contact with the stricken jet. These planes immediately made contact with the controller. One pilot radioed, "That plane has just started to do a big, huge plunge." The CVR transcript reveals the pilot's constant attempts to regain control of the aircraft throughout the dive. The plane pitched down -70 degrees after the jack screw failed and was rolling over to the left. Performing an upset recovery maneuver, the captain said, "Push and roll, push and roll." After successfully increasing the pitch to -28 degrees, he said, "Okay, we're inverted, and now we've got to get it." The crew struggled to roll the plane for the next minute, completely inverted and still diving at a -9-degree pitch, with the captain calling out, "Push, push, push, push the blue side up. Okay, now let's kick rudder, left rudder, left rudder," to which the co-pilot replied, "I can't reach it." Despite the attempt to fly the plane inverted, which nearly completely stopped its descent, the plane had lost too much altitude in the dive and was beyond recovery. Flight 261 crashed into the Pacific Ocean at high speed, about 14 miles offshore between the coastal city of Port Hueneme, California and Anacapa Island. At this point, pilots from nearby aircraft reported in, with one saying, "And he's just hit the water." Yes, sir, he hit the water," said another. "He's down." The impact forces destroyed the aircraft and all occupants were killed by blunt force impact trauma. Workers recovered about 85% of the fuselage and most of the wing components using side-scan sonar, remotely operated vehicles, and a commercial fishing trawler. Furthermore, both engines, the flight data recorder, FDR, and cockpit voice recorder, CVR, were recovered. All wreckage retrieved from the crash site was unloaded at the Seabees Naval Construction Battalion Center in Port Hueneme, California, for NTSB investigators to examine and document. The horizontal stabilizer trim system jack screw and the corresponding Acme nut through which the jack screw turns were discovered. The jack screw is made of case-hardened steel and measures 22 inches long and 1.5 inches in diameter. Later analysis estimated that 90% of the thread in the Acme nut had previously worn away and had finally been stripped out during the flight to San Francisco. The horizontal stabilizer assembly was subjected to aerodynamic forces that it was not designed to withstand after the thread failed, resulting in the complete failure of the overstressed stabilizer assembly. The NTSB determined that the Acme nut thread had deteriorated at 0.012 inches per 1,000 flight hours, much faster than the expected wear of 0.001 inches per 1,000 flight hours, based on the time since the last inspection of the jack screw assembly. The investigation then looked into why the jack screw assembly had not been adequately lubricated during scheduled maintenance. According to interviews with the Alaska Airlines mechanic at SFO who last performed the lubrication, the task took about an hour, whereas the aircraft manufacturer estimated that it would take 4 hours. According to the NTSB, this and other evidence indicated that the SFO mechanic who was responsible for lubricating the jack screw assembly in September 1999 did not adequately perform the task. Laboratory tests revealed that the jack screw assembly's excessive wear could not have occurred in the 4 months between the September 1999 maintenance and the accident flight. As a result, the NTSB concluded that more than just the last lubrication was missed or performed inadequately. With the approval of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Alaska Airlines gradually increased the time between jack screw lubrication and end plate checks between 1985 and 1996. The NTSB investigated the justification for these extensions because each lubrication or end plate check that was not subsequently performed represented an opportunity to lubricate the jack screw or detect excessive wear adequately. In the case of extended lubrication intervals, the investigation could not determine what information, if any, Alaska Airlines provided to the FAA before 1996. According to an FAA inspector's testimony regarding a 1996 extension, Alaska Airlines submitted documentation from McDonnell Douglas to justify their extension. The jack screw assembly was built with 2 independent threads that were strong enough to withstand the forces applied. Maintenance procedures such as lubrication and end plate checks were designed to detect wear before it caused the system to fail. Because the aircraft designers assumed that at least one set of threads would always be available to carry the loads placed on it, the effects of catastrophic failure of the system were not considered and no fail-safe provisions were required. The NTSB issued 24 safety recommendations during the investigation and later in its final report, covering maintenance, regulatory oversight, and aircraft design issues. More than half of these had something to do with the jack screw lubrication and end plate measurement. There was also a recommendation that pilots be instructed not to attempt corrective procedures beyond those specified in the checklist procedures in the event of a flight control system malfunction. Thank you for stopping by to watch. Please subscribe to the channel and post your video recommendations in the comments area if you'd like us to do more films like this.